We're live.
I'm actually.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
A
barakatuh.
couple of seconds.
Let me know when you have the link updated, and then I can post it on our story.
Yo, can you do the Al Jazeera intro?
Yeah, we're live, guys.
I think my Pakistani self knows the Al Jazeera intro. I don't even know the Pakistani national anthem.
Well, can you do like the Pakistani radio intro? Like,
it's not popping up on the.
Oh, the Jazeera intro is the one with the globe.
It's up now. It's up now.
See, I know the intro, but the thing is, I don't know the words to the intro.
like.
Bro, so many bad memories, bro. My dad would just sit.
Bad memories? Wow.
My dad would just sit and watch Al Jazeera for like 4 hours, bro.
I feel like that's all guys do though. Like especially after Ramadan, like you're done, they sit together, check out politics, and listen to the news. I don't know.
But,
You guys know there's an MMA fight going on, and I really want to watch it.
right now?
You can leave.
Did not know that.
Yo, Radio Ramadan.
Stay.
You know, Radio Ramadan all the way. You know, like you gotta put that.
Ramadan radio, G.
Bro, it's all about the Arabi. You know, you gotta flip it. You know, if it's Ramadan radio, you gotta put radio. You know what I'm saying? I'm Arab. Sorry, bro.
I'm also Arab. I don't understand your point.
It's like that didn't make any sense.
The thing is that Radio Ramadan was always a better idea, and so that's why he's.
Oh.
Yo, can you? Sorry, Q. Can you just higher your volume just a little bit, or your mic volume?
All right, man. I'll speak a bit louder.
Link is updated.
The link is updated. All right, say less.
Less.
Go off, sis.
All right, we got more people coming in. I guess we can.
Sent the link on Telegram for Nadia.
I got it. Thank you.
Here.
Everybody share it to your 5 friends if you have any. You don't
Yeah,
have.
anybody watching, share to your group chats and your friends.
Bro, Fob friends are the best. They be supporting you through everything, bro.
And yes, RT.
Like my friends from Jordan, they still text me like, "Hey, bro, good job! Like, congratulations." Like,
Bro, like they think that you don't know Arabian, so they talk English with you, right?
yes, it's so funny, bro. Yes,
So cute that they're making an effort like that, though.
it is. No, of course.
They're so cute. Yeah, love it.
No, Fob friends are the best. They be. That's awkward.
You like your voice?
Do you really want to emphasize that point now? There.
I hate my voice.
I wonder how that sounds in the YouTube stream.
All right. So what you need to do also is when people subscribe, another thing that they need to do is hit that little notification bell.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, remind people about that so that when we go live, they get that notification.
That's fact, though.
So,
Shout out to our 13 loyal subscribers at the moment.
And these
we
are the people that
have
probably
100 subscribers. but
when we go
maybe
live.
all of them have that
notifications.
bell on.
But to hit the bell, you guys have to subscribe first. So hit that red subscribe button and then hit that bell notification icon.
My aunt Khalid Salah's on here. Let's go.
Guys, if you're, we're just waiting for some more people to hop on. If you can, share the link to all your friends and family. We would greatly appreciate it. Get those views up. Get those the amount of people watching up, and then we can get it started, inshallah.
We have a hot topic today.
Very hot. Man's not hot.
Never hot, bro. Never hot.
Man's not.
We got an important topic today.
If we hit 1,000 subscribers, can we do a giveaway, please? Like
Can we what?
a giveaway, like an iPhone?
Oh,
An
I don't
iPhone.
have an iPhone.
That's mine.
If you get us some sponsors, bro, we got anything.
Y'all got that ISM West money over there, though. What's going
I'll give them a sealed message PDF.
I don't think he can take out those funds, you know. Like,
Everybody pick something that you like, and they throw it inside a gift bag, and we'll put it in.
So we are indeed just vibing while we wait for more.
Now they'll throw in a Syrian flag. I don't know, man. Of course. Really be patriotic, you know. We got to be
We'll just
patriotic.
throw like a cultural gift bag from everyone who's from every country here. So like the 3 countries here.
or it could be like a food basket. I don't know. That'd probably not be a good idea, actually.
What countries?
Yo, if we had Ramadan radio merch, that'd be so sick.
Yo,
We need a local first.
Yo,
though.
Loki, I'd be down to design some if we actually got people who want to buy.
That'd be cool.
We gotta wait it out though.
Give away an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil. That's a good one, Nina.
No way, bro.
We can only give giveaways if we got those views, you know?
That's
You
true.
got those likes and subscribes and views. It's all about that.
Dang, I am tired. This Caribou coffee
The
did not.
youth
Followers, man.
Have Adidas
Mir,
sponsor
King
Ramadan
Mir
Radio.
says
Yes,
Nader is
bro.
so
If Adidas
handsome.
sponsored Ramadan
My
Radio,
God.
Allah.
That's my cousin Samir, bro. Samir, what's your
King Mir, mashallah,
Is he also
mashallah.
a fob?
And he sadaqt,
No.
sadaqt.
Because fobs are always like the nicest people.
That's true. That's true.
Mandy, are you saying you're the nicest person?
I'm not, you know, I'm not saying anything.
Ouch.
Wow.
All right.
We're just
So
gonna. Should we wait for a few
think-
more viewers?
We're about 25-ish now, right? You want to get started?
We could get started, inshallah.
I'm done.
Let's run.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who are on, if you guys can just share this with whoever you think will benefit, let them jump on, inshallah, real quick.
Yes, inshallah. But cool, we can get started. So, assalamu alaikum. My name is Aamna Javid. I don't know the Al Jazeera intro, so I'm not gonna attempt it. But I will just say I'm Aamna Javid and call it a day. So basically, today's topic is women in Islam, and I just want to preface this whole conversation with a reminder that inshallah we're all going to give our input and perspective and provide knowledge wherever and however we can. To avoid any potential risk of discomfort or whatever it may be, please remember that women in Islam is a topic that requires everyone to be involved, not just women. So there's a lot of issues nowadays that are surrounding a patriarchal society. In order to address that, we need men present. This is something we need to address as a society, not as a gender. So just want to remind everyone of that before we begin, inshallah, because I think it's just important that we keep that in mind. So yeah. So before anything, I want to do this little I'm just gonna say the story because I feel like everyone kind of knows this practice test, whatever that was kind of done, because I heard it in a podcast that I think everyone has started listening to. The Surah Maryam one, the Heartwork series, will always promote that. But basically, Abdurrahman Murphy was saying how, I believe it was Iman Abdul Nasser, I'm not sure, but they were in a class, just doing their thing. And then the teacher asked, he's like, okay, so real question, what is a woman's role in Islam? Someone's like, oh, taking care of the kids. Iman's like, nope. So I was like, okay, taking care of the house. Nope. Okay, taking care of the husband. Nope. And just people kept answering things like that. And eventually he's like, man, I'm so disappointed in you guys. Aren't you guys like hafaz and trying to be like scholars and stuff? He's like, a woman's role in Islam is to serve Allah. It's the same role as a man's. So I kind of just want to start off with that because low-key when I heard that question too, I was like, yeah, to take care of her house, right? But it's just like an inherent bias that's unfortunately present. But yeah, so contrary to popular stereotypical beliefs, Islam gave women rights before really anyone else did. They gave women the right to have a voice, the right to have a choice. And unfortunately, culture has, in some ways and forms, misinterpreted that. So today we kind of want to delve into the whole woman in Islam topic that's pretty broad, but inshallah, we're going to try to cover wherever we can. Just to start it off, I want to ask everyone, who are some important or powerful figures in Islam that are women? This doesn't have to be in the prophetical eras. It can be later on. It could be recent. But just as anyone give me examples of who and why they are powerful and women?
I can start us off. So obviously this is going to be like the person that I thought of right away, right off the bat, is Sumayya radiallahu anha. And for those of you who don't know who Sumayya radiallahu anha was, Sumayya radiallahu anha was actually the first martyr of Islam. The first martyr of Islam is no small honor. That's a huge, huge, huge title, a huge honor. And if you guys don't know the story behind it, Sumayya radiallahu anha was one of the early converts to Islam, and she was tortured and maligned by people of Quraysh because of her faith. And she stood strong throughout all her struggles. And subhanAllah, she was killed. She was killed by the people of Quraysh because of her faith. And we know her today as the first martyr of Islam, which is one of the most amazing titles that someone can have. So that's right off the bat, just someone I thought of right away. A shaheed is, by the way, shaheed is a martyr. So just wanted to clarify that.
I can go next. I picked Maryam and radiallahu anha, and I think that just the story of like how she kind of communicated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not directly of course, but just the fact that like she was such a pious person, and she honestly inspired like so many people with her story, and she was able to essentially devote herself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in so many ways she sorry, one second. Uh, she is like one of the people that I feel like we look up to, because even though she's a woman, going off of what Aamna was saying, she essentially like was put in such a high status in so many people's eyes, and you know she was even given her own surah dedicated to her story in the Quran. And I think that a lot of people who don't necessarily know that, for instance, like non-Muslims might not know like our stance about Maryam radiallahu anha, might kind of jump to a conclusion that we don't necessarily like have the right idea about her. I think that she, just the things that she's done, and her trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is such a really big thing. And even though she was like a woman, like she is still held to a high regard. And the fact that essentially what Amna was saying, like even though between like men and women, like we can still be, we can still have piety, we can still have a high regard in other people's eyes. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't really, you know, favor like men over women, even though in the Quran, like, you know, it's used like the plural like men form or whatever. I just wanted to kind of like throw that out there as something. But I definitely like Maryam was was somebody that definitely came to mind first, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to pick just one person because there's so many women in Islam that have contributed in many different ways. But yeah, it was really hard for me to pick one. But the one I thought it was Asiya, radiallahu, the wife of the Fir'aun. Because for me, when I think about that, if you're married to literally the most evil man during that time, and to have that much patience, and she was a very intelligent woman too, and she took in Musa alayhi salam, and she protected him and raised him, or yeah, raised him as her own. That is something that I was just so impressed, and that really touched me in a way where she was so pious, even though her husband was the worst of human beings, which is amazing to me.
I just wanted to address the comments. So they in the comments, Noel said Khadija radiallahu anha, and man, I feel like we could go on like a whole like our own episode just about Khadija radiallahu anha, and probably even any of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Khadija radiallahu anha, like this emotional support system of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like right from day one, she had his back. Right, he came down like shaking. Right, when he got his first wahi, and she was like, "I got you. Like I'm here for you. Like no matter what." And she was his support system. She was the first, like Adana said, she was the first person to accept Islam. And no matter what, no matter how like crazy it sounded that the Prophet ﷺ was getting like revelation, he saw an angel, she had his back. So
if I had to add to that, honestly, I was gonna go for somebody that's less spoken about, which is Fatima bint al-Hasan, and she was a hadith scholar of like the 5th and 6th century. And I just wanted to note that there was a lot of women scholars in back in the ages, and like actually, I read an article about saying that the contribution of women in hadith has been like a great, like it was like astounding in like in the age of the Prophet or the prophetic era. And she was actually known to be distinguished, like she would be distinguished from other people because she would be considered like the best authority when it was like when they were trying to put together Sahih al-Bukhari in her time. Abu Dar, one of the leading scholars of the period, attached such a great importance to her authority, and he advised the students to study Sahih under no one else because her quality of her worship. And among her students were Al-Khatib, Al-Baghdadi, and Al-Humaydi.
So I guess for me, it would be, not to flex my own name, but Aamna, the Prophet Muhammad Muhammad's mom, just because I was thinking about it, and especially in that era, in an era where like daughters were buried because it was kind of shameful to have a daughter. She raised the Prophet Muhammad sallam kind of on her own. Like I know she had like a wet nurse and her like, you know, siblings and stuff, but the fact that she had lost her husband when her son was born and she did not get remarried in that time, that says a lot, especially in that era. Women couldn't work, women couldn't do anything, you know. So for her to still choose to raise him on her own for however many years before she, you know, passed away, that's a really big deal, especially, and I'm gonna keep saying it, especially in that time, because I can't even imagine, like, it's hard now, and we praise single mothers now, as we should. um Obviously praise single mothers now and single parents in general, but especially then, like, that didn't happen very often, and typically if you were, you would get remarried or married off again, because there wasn't much survival that could happen for you. Like there's no way you could do that and then raise your own kid. But the fact that she did that, like, subhanallah, that takes so much, so much power, so much strength, especially to lose your husband so early on. So I just thought that was, I remember when I was thinking about it, I was like, man, that's insane, especially when you put it into context.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such an honor for you to have her name, Amna, mashallah. There's something in the comments that Layla said, and it was about Khalwa bint al-Azwar, which, by the way, she was a homie. Honestly, I love learning about her because she was considered one of the best military leaders. And I need you guys to think about that. This is a woman who is fighting. And I mean, normally when, let's be real, when we're thinking of Muslim women in today's context, would we really let our daughters or our mothers go off to war and be, and not only that, to be a leader of them? Probably not. But she was at that time, which was, I think, absolutely incredible. She was actually another woman I had on my list. But like I said, it's just so hard. And I think everyone else can attest to this. It's really hard just to pick one woman that's our favorite or that impacts us the most, because all of them impacts us in different ways.
Just to go off of that real quick, I definitely agree. Like when I was thinking of a Muslim woman in Islam, another person that honestly came to mind was Nusayba bint Ka'b, which essentially goes off of like what you were saying about women being in the military. Because like at, you know, at the beginning, like of Islam, like that wasn't necessarily something that was typical, of course. But I think there's just the fact that a woman like can like fight and show that yes, like they can you know, involve themselves in war. It's not just like for the men to do that, is definitely like a, and it's something that, you know, you see like portrayed in movies and whatever, and just to show that like women can fight too. I think just hearing those stories is really interesting as well, just to know that there are like there's presence in different fields. Women aren't just, you know, stay-at-home moms.
I just wanted to add, not only can women fight, but they can also like be like teachers and scholars, and like that's crazy. Like to think that, because mostly when we think of scholars, we think of scholars in Islam to be like men. When we like refer to like a hadith or like someone to refer to, we usually refer a lot to men, and we lack, or like we like tend to like shy away from mentioning women sometimes. And I think that's like it's a super powerful like thing to like mention, I think, other than fighting, you know, like, which is really also a great thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like, at least in our community, alhamdulillah, like we have a healthy number of Muslima alimas, but I feel like just like it's a male dominated thing to go and like, you know, study Islam, I feel, more or less. I don't know if Qari Rahman can kind of test to that. But I guess just kind of going off of Maryam radiallahu anha, something that I wanted to mention and I forgot when I was talking, but her mother wanted her to, or she wanted to have a boy, but instead she had a girl. And she wanted a boy so that she can, or so that he can go and, you know, become a scholar. And I think it's kind of ironic that like she got a girl, and you know, like even so, like Maryam was able to become such an inspirational figure in Islam that is like known about and learned and just like studied about till this day, which is really crazy. SubhanAllah.
I'm curious who Karan Aman has has an
Very cool.
question.
All right. So, when you think about women in Islam, or at least influential women, one thing that I've noticed a lot of us talking about and discussing were people who were amazing in just, you know, different public life, right? We're talking about people who were amazing in public life. So someone was an amazing scholar, like Aisha radiallahu anha was an OG. She was probably on the top 5 list of those who narrate the most ahadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was a scholar of her time. She was a muhadditha. The companions would come to her and seek advice and learn from her. And she was just an amazing person overall. You also have, you know, Khadija radiallahu anha was who was the first, you know, woman who supported the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you know, took care of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's, you know, financial needs, but also his, you know, the needs of his mission. She financed the mission of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She financed the beginning of Islam, and the call of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Um, so we talked about, you know, Maryam alayhi salam, and Maryam alayhi salam's amazing worship and her dedication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Um, and you know, when I think of women, I think of a famous companion by the name of Shifa bint Abdullah radiallahu anha, who was an amazing companion, right? Shifa radiallahu anha was, not, her real name wasn't Shifa. Her real name wasn't Shifa. So why do you think she was called Shifa, guys? Why do you think her name was given Shifa?
He was a doctor on like the some.
So she yes, she was from the first women who actually had the understanding of medicine. And interestingly, Aisha radiallahu anha also had knowledge of medicine, and her own nephew once asked her that, I'm not astonished by like your ability to narrate hadith, or your ability to present fiqh rulings, or your ability to do any of that, because you're the Prophet's wife. We expect that from you. Like you lived with him, you knew everything about him. But he was like, how in the world do you know medicine? Like, how do you have knowledge of medicine? And so she says, you know what, when groups would come, especially in the last year of the Prophet's life, you had delegations that would come and the Prophet was sick, she would seek out what, knowledge, and seek out, you know, a lot of women, sorry, a lot of the people that came, she would seek out advice and techniques of how to cure certain illnesses and ailments. So Shifa bint Abdullah was an amazing woman who was not only known as Shifa, but she was also by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sort of made someone who was in charge of the marketplace. Like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to consult with her, like, what do you think, how should we run this marketplace? And the Prophet ﷺ, and even in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, he sort of made her in charge of the marketplace, of making sure things are going right, making sure that, you know, everyone is there's fair trade, you know, all the things that we would talk about today in business and a business model. So Shifa bint Abdullah radiallahu anha was amazing from that perspective, right? You have all these amazing women, but then you have all those women who may not be known by name, and they were still companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and they were still amazing. Yes, they may not have fought in a battle. Yes, they may not have, gone and taught hadith into the companions, or they may not have been the ones that were in charge of the marketplace, but they were those who produced some of the best children. They were those who were, produced the best generation. The Prophet ﷺ says, خير أمتي قرني ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم. The best of generations are those that come with me, those that my time, and that comes after me, and the generation that comes after that. The Sahaba, the Tabi'un, and the Tabi'un. You had a generation, an entire group of women who may not have been out there, but they were the best teachers, the best role models, the best mothers to their children within their homes. Not to say that the other companions weren't, but I'm trying to say that a lot of times when we talk about inspirational women, right, we tend to focus on something that may have been in public life, but subhanallah, we have so many of the female companions of the Prophet ﷺ who are equally amazing in their own lives, even though their lives were more private, and they were the mothers of an entire generation that changed history, that changed the face of this planet. And that's what we have to take our hats off to. These women were amazing women who sacrificed, who put their, the mission of the Prophet and the tarbiyah of the Prophet in front of themselves, for their children and for their kids and for their communities and for their societies, that literally brought about an amazing change in our ummah. And so a shout out to all those women and all our mothers and all our sisters who are in the public life, who are out in the public life, and those who are, staying strong, giving tarbiyah even within their homes, because obviously this was something that we find the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam speaking very highly of as well. So those are some of my thoughts as we get started. I know that people may already be like, "Man, this guy wants to talk about women staying at home already." No, no, no. That's not the point here. The point is that when we honor women, we honor all women, man. We honor all women, not those who just are in public life or those who are in some public position, but we honor all women who who are just doing what they could and what they can to the best of their ability. No one is less of a woman because of not being able to do something, and no one is more of a woman because they did something another woman didn't do. Women are amazing on their own, inshallah.
Thank you. I went up with that last statement.
Yeah,
But
you
no,
did.
it's true. I think, even now, look, because we all mention examples from like the prophetic eras, but even now we have women like Ilhan Omar, like Ibtihaj Muhammad, like these are powerful women who have done so much for minorities and for people everywhere that it's insane. Like we look up to them because it's like, man, look at that, like a Muslim woman like in a hijab doing that. Like it's so nice to see the representation, but then also in our own homes we have our mothers who are just as strong, as just as powerful, and who have struggled so much just to raise us. Like, and it's like a different species. But with the examples we've all presented, it's clear that there is an abundance of leadership roles filled by women. So where do you think this whole stigma of an oppressed Muslim woman started?
So I guess I can address this. I don't know. I can't talk about like when it started, but I can talk about like why it currently exists and why we see it today. I mean, if you look at like countries like Saudi Arabia, right? Saudi Arabia is unfortunately the country that contains the holiest two cities in our religion, Mecca and Medina. And yet the government of Saudi Arabia, I'm not trying to be controversial or anything, but I think we all agree with this. They are not a representation of Islam by any means. I mean, they just recently let women drive, right? I mean, I don't, I know people from Saudi Arabia that tell me like, it is absolutely insane, like just how terrible life is for women over there. And subhanAllah, that's just not the case at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Women were not oppressed at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Women were not stuffed in homes like I don't know, like some sort of material object at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, me and my mother were just discussing this incident today. At the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the whole Aisha story happened, the story of the ifk, right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the ayahs of the Quran clearing Aisha's name, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he told Aisha and Qaisab, you can correct me if I got the story wrong, but he told Aisha radiallahu anha, he's like, go thank the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you know what Aisha radiallahu anha said? Aisha said, why would I thank the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He didn't do nothing. Like it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who sent these verses from the Quran. So I mean, Aisha radiallahu anha could say that, her husband was the Prophet, and she said, I'm not going to thank the Prophet for this. Like, this was Allah's doing, not the Prophet's. So she was like such an independent, strong-willed individual.
Yeah.
Like,
Now you also have to know the backstory of that, though. I mean, it wasn't that she was disrespecting the Prophet ﷺ. Again, she was a wife of the Prophet, so she had that type of relationship with the Prophet ﷺ. I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression here that she was like a bad, bad at, astaghfirullah. But she was something like really, really, bad to the bone type of person, like who could just no, no, no. She was a very, very honorable woman. She was a very, very respectable woman. That was her relationship with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was her. And the backstory of it is really interesting because the Prophet didn't necessarily say she was innocent. Like the Prophet didn't know. Even her own father, Abu Bakr, didn't say, like when she said, my father, can you speak on my behalf? And Abu Bakr said, look, I am sorry. I don't know if you are truly innocent or not. I'm not just going to say something because I'm your father. Like I don't have the facts. And that was true loyalty to the truth. They were loyal to the truth. They weren't loyal to necessarily human beings. They loved their human beings, but when it came to the truth, they knew that God is, you know, Allah is there, and they're not going to just make up something that they don't have knowledge of. And so because of that, Aisha radiallahu anha obviously was, like, I'm your wife, and you should have taken my side, and I didn't do anything, and there was nothing wrong here. And so now, after so much time, when Allah finally reveals verses for Aisha, like Allah doesn't is not is not happy with a child speaking, like that, for Yusuf alayhi salam, a child speaks. Allah decides that for the honor of Aisha, I will speak. I will reveal my words to defend the honor of Aisha radiallahu anha. So her things were to Allah, like, my Allah saved me. My Allah, granted me this honor, right? The Prophet ﷺ is just a medium, but Allah is the one that spoke on my behalf. So that was that unique relationship that she had with the Prophet ﷺ, because she was her wife.
His wife. His wife.
Sorry, my bad. She was his wife. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the correction.
I got you.
Well, the thing is, it's like when we think about how whenever we turn on the news and we see some Muslim women on there, like it's just that stereotypical portrayal of, oh no, these people are covered and they have no choice and people are just making decisions for them, blah blah blah. I mean, I remember once when I started wearing hijab, people asked me if it was because my father or my brother was forcing to do it, and I'm like, no, it's because I want to do it. And it's a genuine shock for people in the West because they are so used to seeing this portrayal of us that we're oppressed and everything. But then again, at the same time, we have to think when the cultures from some of the countries we come from, the way that women are treated. I mean, we kind of talked about this, maybe it was last episode or a couple episodes back, where they take some hadiths and they kind of twist it because they don't know the whole story. And in that way, they oppress women too. So we kind of get what do you call the short end of the sticks either way, which is really, really frustrating as well.
I think something to go along with that. I might be getting into some controversy with this, but I think some people that are not, that don't have the necessary knowledge to make, like, they try interpreting the Quran with no background knowledge, and from the Quran some men I think feel empowered to, like, I don't know, disrespect women just because things are mentioned in the Quran, which, if taken out of context, can easily be seen as such. And I think before people start interpreting the Quran or Hadith, it's important to have the necessary knowledge to do so, and read the context. Why was such ayat revealed? Why was this Hadith said? Who did he say it to? And different things like that. All these things are necessary to take into consideration. Another thing I wanted to add was, I feel like after the time of the Prophet ﷺ, things were at their best, right? The way women were treated and other things, they were at their best time. Like there was no racism, there was women were treated properly and stuff like that. I think as we go, there's that fluctuation and thing in the way things run, I guess. So right now we see that women are being treated the best, as well as racism is high. So I think there's that natural fluctuation, and then I think it's our job to kind of bring that back into balance. So yeah.
I think it can kind of stem from different perspectives and different mentalities of just perspectives of the situation in general. And I think that can be kind of tainted based on your personal experiences, based on your culture. I think that in some cultures, it might seem like exactly what Nadia was saying, in the Western society, they might think oh, you're wearing a headscarf, you're covering your beauty, you're oppressed, but to us, we interpret it as something completely different. We're not wearing it because somebody's forcing us. I mean, some people do, unfortunately, but, most of us, we're not wearing it because we're being forced to do it. We do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for numerous reasons. But I think it just kind of depends on the culture that's kind of two cultures that are contrasting each other. They're just kind of comparing their own experiences from whatever they're used to. And I think just the actual aspect of oppression can just kind of depend on I guess for instance this situation is just gender exploitation. So for instance in America people we all know we mentioned at the beginning how Islam gave women, some basic civic rights that in America they only recently got, and so it's through that just realization of comparing yourself to others or just to different cultures that you kind of realize that you are being oppressed, or you think that other people are being oppressed. So it's just kind of like that perspective and that lens that you're looking through is what I kind of think is an important aspect.
So we got a comment, and it's from Sadia, and it says, can you speak on how the expectations for women behavior, and especially the hijab, are so much more higher for women than men? And then he says in parentheses, I think it's a culture thing. So I'm going to kind of speak on my own personal experience with this, because I wore hijab pretty late. I wore it the summer after my freshman year in college. And I saw firsthand the expectation just went high for my family. And I'm not picking on them. I swear to God, I love them so much. But basically what they said was, when I went to them and I said, I want to start wearing hijab, they said, well, you need to like perfect this. You need to memorize this. Like they just listed this whole thing off. They're like, it's better if you just wait or just get married and then wear it. And I said, no, I want to wear it right now. So I wore it anyways. And then after that, it's like every little thing that I did, even though I was basically the same person as what I was before, they would take it in a way that's like, well, why did you do this? You're hijab, aren't you more religious? Or if I try to give them advice, or like my siblings, they would say, well, you're just saying this because you just think you're more religious than us. So it is really frustrating when a piece of cloth, honestly, is just now saying that, you know what, yeah, I'm Muslim and this is just how I'm going to act. Because I understand that when you wear hijab, you are taking a responsibility to represent Islam in the best way possible. But at the same time, you can't expect every single person to be perfect. Not every single hijabi is going to be a very innocent person on the inside. And not every single person who doesn't wear hijab is not going to be this vicious, evil person ever. Because that was the one thing that turned me off, is when I started wearing it, I got so many comments. And it was actually kind of very upsetting how many comments I got from Muslim men, that they told me that, why are you wearing this? You're not even wearing it the right way. You did it too late, blah, blah, blah. And I just sat there and I said, well, I'm wearing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't wear it for people. Because if I wore hijab for people, kind of like what Hiba was saying too, if I wore hijab for people, then I wouldn't have worn it in the first place, So I really wanted to touch on that, because it's really frustrating how, because hijab is so visible, that automatically people can make assumptions about you.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, like, so for those who don't know, like, I started wearing the hijab when I was in like high school. I went to Saddam school, so it wasn't like a huge celebratory thing because it was low-key part of my uniform. And then my sister didn't wear it until college, I believe, is when she like started officially wearing it. And then my mom still doesn't wear it now. So like I had mentioned in the previous podcast, my mom works in Dunkin' Donuts, and it's so upsetting because there are Muslims who go to her and say, hey, so your daughters wear the hijab, why don't you? I'm sorry, but that is none of your business. I don't understand why the expectations for, choosing to wear the hijab or not is also a very big, I don't know, just a very big part. And it's like, if someone in your family wears it, you're also expected to do the same. And, I'm just gonna like say straight up, like the hijab is very important. It exemplifies a lot of things. It's a cloth on your head, but it's supposed to exemplify modesty more than anything, and humility. Like that's something that needs to be reiterated a lot, because you can wear the hijab and everything, but if you're not a good person, it doesn't even matter. You know, if you wear like if you don't wear the hijab and you're a good person, you might be closer to Allah than someone who does. And it's really upsetting to see that even if even if you wear the hijab, you have these super high expectations that aren't always met and that are not necessarily fair to the person wearing it. And then if you're related to someone who does, they kind of expect you to wear one, or they think of you as less because you don't. I think that is a huge part of these like expectations. Like Sadia said, speak about how expectations for a woman's behavior is. Like I think that's part of it too, is that you're kind of expected to wear it. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, because you should. It's fun. At the end of the day, it is mandatory, but you kind of you get to not decide. You should wear it eventually, but it's your choice when. Like at the end of the day, your relationship with Allah is your relationship with the Allah. And it's not fair that you're being judged for wearing it or for not wearing it, or expected to be the representation of Islam, just because you're wearing it. Like I know it's more obvious to people that I'm Muslim than like Taha. I mean, Taha looks pretty Muslim, not gonna lie, especially with that beard, but it's just more like people see me and I'll be in class and I'll just get like directly Muslim question, my theology class, turn to Aamna. She knows all the answers. Bro, I don't. Like I wish I did. Well, I wish I could sit there and spit fire about Islam, but I can't always do that, Like there's these expectations, not just in behavior, but in knowledge, but in appearance, but in there's I'm sorry, like one more last thing and I swear I'll stop ranting, but there's like this negative connotation almost that you're kind of this conservative person if you do wear or if you do that, which is also really stupid and not fair. Like, I'm not going to judge you just because I wear the hijab. Like, that's also an expectation in a lot of cases that other women have of women in a hijab. I'm sorry, I just like went in so many different
That
directions.
was
or
that was
Like,
facts.
there's
or
so much
men,
that ties into it, and it's really
yeah, or
frustrating
men who
sometimes.
have beards and look like me.
Just a
I mean,
quick
you're in a
add.
boat, so Ken, you're basically a part of the game.
Oh, God. Just a really quick add. It's just to kind of connect like what Amna and Nadia was saying. It's almost as if like we can never satisfy the quote unquote like expectations. It's like, well, I'm not hijabi. People are saying, oh, you need to do XYZ, like, you know, whatever. And then once you wear hijab, it's like, okay, well, now you got to be like this perfect person who knows like all about their deen. And if you don't, it's like the end of the world. And like people are going to judge you either way. It's almost as if you know, can't satisfy whoever is around you, whether it's your family or like your community. And I think like when people kind of push you towards that and they like show that like you're not meeting their expectations, it can kind of make you like really feel like you're not good enough, and that could just go down like another really like bad path, especially women in general with like self-esteem issues. So
Yeah, and just tying back all this together, I feel like one comment kind of caught me. Think sorry, um, it was said by Zahra, and she was talking about how women are seen as one-dimensional on on mainstream you know, whether it's a TV show, and or whether it's anything else. But she said it also doesn't help when so many mainstream TV shows portray Muslims, a woman as one-dimensional, oppressed being who are embarrassed of their deeds plus culture. And I thought that was pretty powerful. I think that really does happen a lot, and I think media does have a say in how people think, and I think they do portray Muslim women who women you know, hijab as super conservative, or even like Kiwan said, Muslim men who have beards or wear a thobe in the same way. Obviously, this is not about men, but um, it's just a side comment. But another thing was a question for you guys. Marwa said something, but I really wanted to ask about it. It was just, she said society is profiting off a woman's body, and women are objectified and brainwashed to the point where we start to think showing beauty is a freedom. I'm just curious, like, to know what you guys think about that. Like,
Okay,
just like the woman in this chat.
okay, so I know you said the woman in this chat, but I'm going to speak just because I actually was going to bring that up right now. Marwa's point is very good, and it goes back to the whole idea of why women or Muslim women are looked at as oppressed. This whole idea, like the brainwashing aspect of society, is a massive, massive, massive point, right? She said, this is because Western civilization equates immodesty as freedom, when in reality, that is a real oppression. And bro, that is such a solid, solid, solid point, okay? In today's day and age, the roles have flipped, the ideologies have flipped and reversed. If you're a woman who's covering up and trying to be modest, you're looked down upon, you're looked at as someone who's oppressed. Whereas if you're someone who, you know, you're going out and doing all kinds of things, you're looked at as the free person. And then she followed that comment up by saying something else. She said society is profiting off the woman's body, and women are objectified and brainwashed to the point where we start to think showing beauty is freedom. Like, bro, I'm not. Like, that's so perfectly said. I can barely add anything to that. All I want to say is just that whole idea of profiting off of this oppression. This is literally oppression that the society is profiting off of. You know what I'm saying? That whole beauty industry, that is oppression, dude. Like, women are held to such high standards when it comes to beauty. If you're a man, you can look like trash and you'll still find a wife. But unfortunately, like, standards of beauty for women are so much more narrow and so much more so much less accepting. So Marwa's point was really, really solid on the head. Like, we have to think about this. We have to realize that it's society doing the brainwashing and making the woman oppressed. You know, not Islam. Islam's not the one doing the oppression. So yeah.
Yeah, so just building off of that, I mean, what Nader said about how high these standards are for women. I mean, so if you see some, I'm not picking on any particular blogger, but these hijabi bloggers, I mean, sometimes the way that they dress or the way that they do things are technically not Islamic, but it's encouraged. And some of them have taken off their hijabs and have encouraged other people to do so, which is so worrisome to me because that is not what our religion has taught us. And the other thing I wanted to mention also is, I'm sure some of you guys have heard of Orientalism. And that is something, if you guys haven't, I encourage you to buy this book by Edward Said and learn about this, because it basically talks about how the West has portrayed the East, or it's mainly the Arab East, as these backwards, these basically savages people, and how they manage to do that. I think if you're a Muslim or if you're Arab or whoever you are, you should read this, because when I read it, I was completely blown away, and I didn't realize how, I guess, huge this was, or how integrated it is in our lives today. So that I just want to throw that on there.
Yeah, to answer the question that I had initially asked, haha, full loop. Basically, kind of like how the whole like oppressed Muslim woman stigma started. I mean, I think we've all established kind of that it starts off of like culture and just patriarchal society, all the good stuff. I think a big part of why it's continued, and this is kind of going with what Marwa just said about how it's not just the beauty industry, it's in every aspect of life. I think a big part of it is Western feminism, especially the whole like Muslim oppressed woman status, and it's really, really frustrating, for a lot of reasons that, like, I understand feminism, for those who don't know, because sometimes people are like, how are you a feminist, bro? Like, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Feminism is basically just supporting women's rights. Like, that's as simple as it is. Unfortunately, there's different branches, which is kind of weird, but Western feminism is, I'm going to be very unfiltered here, is just for white women. And it's really annoying because it's a really prominent kind of feminism that's, like, everywhere. Like, the
It's
whole,
also
like,
about man hating, by the way.
oh yes, of course. We hate mansplainers. These boys need to get off the podcast. I'm just kidding. But like the whole like free the nipple movement and all that stuff, like that is their form of freedom. And it's very, very annoying that people have approached me in a hijab and said, hey, like, you're in America, you don't have to wear that, you can take that off. Do you realize that by you approaching me and saying that, you're oppressing me? Like, this is my choice. I want to do that. You thinking that I don't want to is a form of oppression. Like, do you not understand that? And it's just, I think that will always unfortunately be a huge part of why the stigma is still alive. And I know, like, Nadia said it too, like it's a huge society thing, but at the end of the day, we are also society, like we have to figure out like how to handle these situations. And it's not just the beauty industry, it's in work. People see when I work at the hospital, people see me in a hijab, it's like, oh man, that's a Muslim. Some people don't even think I'm capable of handling my job. Like, that's how annoying it is, And I love how Nadia's eating. I'm sorry, I had to throw you under the bus. Also, and like that you can eat. Well, you can eat. Go for it. It's post iftar. We're all hungry right now. But no, just like in every day.
Your mom is gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Marwa just dropped some facts in the comments there. Marwa just dropped some facts in the comments there. Mashallah.
Honestly,
back to true Islam, we wouldn't need feminism.
That's very true.
Back to true Islam, we wouldn't need feminism.
It's very
because
true.
the Prophet ﷺ stood up for the women and the rights of women and taught us the rights of women and taught us how to treat women. And, we didn't need feminism to come and rescue us. Muslim women do not need feminism to rescue them. Understand that. Women need the Prophet and the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. That's the only thing that's going to save you. That's the only thing that's going to empower you. That's the only thing that's going to give you true independence and true power in your life.
Go off, sis.
I just wanted to add something, if you guys don't mind. I was gonna add about how it's kind of portrayed as like being free when women take off the hijab, or like portray freedom to some in society. And I just wanted to refer to one advertisement that came upon, like I think it was, I don't know if it was this year, maybe last year. It was like an Israeli model. She was she sparked like some widespread like crazy like people were going off on her because she was in an ad with this like Israeli hoodie clothing company, and she was seen like just taking off her like her it's called hijab, and after that it was like a sign of like freedom or something like that. And I remember on that day, like all I would see on my news or my social media feed was just that advertisement, and people just like saying like, why would they do this? Like, this is like so incorrect. Like, and people just like trying to defend Muslim women, like everybody, whether it was somebody that wear the hijab or somebody that didn't wear the hijab. And I thought that was super powerful, like that everybody, like of all the Muslim women, like, and even like the non-Muslims, like came together to like really spread the true message of the hijab, you know.
Something I want to add to like UN and Marwa's point. Like Islam is amazing, man. Like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like he took the most backwards of societies, right? The daughters were being buried alive. Women were like objects. Like they didn't have like value. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, and in one generation, 23-ish years, he took the status of women and he like made them into scholars, he made them into teachers, he made them into nurses, he made them have value. And subhanallah, man, Islam, alhamdulillah for Islam, man, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Like, Islam's the biggest blessing ever. I will say that forever, alhamdulillah. So I'm gonna get a little controversial. I don't think it's controversial, but this might come off as controversial. So and it's obvious that in Islam where women are ranked really high, and like QN just said, Taha just said, everyone just said, like Islam gave women rights before anyone else did, and Western feminism is nothing. You just need the Prophet Muhammad and Islamic proper Islamic teachings to go back to how it really should be, or in terms of like this whole feminism idea. So, like I said, women are ranked high in Islam, right? But that does ask the question, and I'm gonna get controversial here: are genders equal? Because a huge part of what we see now and what we hear now is the whole debate of equality, 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 equality. So I kind of want to answer this first to kind of set up the route, path, journey, platform. Nadia, drop a dictionary word in if you want. You are a thesaurus, mashallah. But I think I'm gonna be straight up here. They're not. Guys and girls, genders are not equal. They're actually more equitable, which is, if QN wants to screen share that pic that he shared with us, it's a really good example of why we should be preaching equity and not equality. Okay, so equity, for those who don't know, is basically just fairness and being just. The thing with equality is although things can be equal, that does not mean they are necessarily fair. Okay, that's number one. Number two, men and women, and if you have taken even basic anatomy or anything of the sort, you know that physiologically there are differences, Oh, look, okay, look, perfect. That picture right there. Like, to your left, that is equality. To your right, that is equity. And that's a perfect example of why we should be trying to vouch for equity and not equality. Don't get me wrong. For things like equal pay, all that stuff, I think that should definitely be equal. That is not fair that a woman gets paid less than a man does. But generally, overall, I don't think equality is what should be preached. I'm 100% sure it should be equity. So going back to what I was saying earlier about men and women being physiologically equal, look, let me give you an example. I flex this a lot, so I'm gonna say it right here. I work out. A lot of people know this. I like to flex every now and then, be like, yo, look at my biceps, I'm big as heck. But that's just for a girl, like you've seen like guys who are built, who get really buff. If a girl wants to reach that level, she has to take pre-workout and she has to take testosterone. That is one example of how men and women are physiologically different. To even reach that level of a physical looking stance, you need hormones, and that hormone is something that is primarily in men. That is just one example. Now, what I am going to say is that men and women were created to complement each other. A man needs a woman just as much as a woman needs a man. So I wonder if anyone else wants to add on to that, but I think that's just important to answer because
Yeah. I mean, sorry, just a little point here. So the idea of equity and equality, very important, right? There are certain areas though that there should be equality, right? We talk about, like, you mentioned the idea of, equal pay and stuff. So again, when there are certain things that are not necessarily connected to, what well, one thing is religion, okay? Because in religion, in Islam, generally, where we don't seek equality, okay, we seek equity. But then things that are not related to religion, non-religious related matters, in those areas, there's nothing wrong to ask for equality. There's nothing wrong to demand equality, especially when you're living in a society that doesn't live off of the rules of Islam per se. But it's always important to remember that success doesn't come from equality. Success doesn't come from this everyone being at the same level. Rather, there will be oppression, right? There may be oppression and injustice when you try to live and bring that level of equality amongst all people, right? There, you may be doing injustice to a particular type of group of people when you try to establish equality. And you know, as so that's a slow one point that I want to bring up.
So yeah, Taha, I know you wanted to say something, so go for it.
Um, Something that with this equality stuff is important to address. I think there was a story. Q1, correct me if I say anything incorrectly. But at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, one of his wives approached him, and she asked, like in the Quran, why is it always like referring to men, like constantly when Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is like referring to like everyone, He says it in a masculine form, and that's just the way the grammatical way of Arabic works. But he was like, why can't like women be addressed once in a while? Basically, was the question, and the Prophet ﷺ was a little bit silent. And a little later on, I think it was Revelation came down, and Quran was revealed, and in Surah Ahzab, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, "Inna al-Muslimin wal-Muslimat wal-Mu'minin wal-Mu'minat wal-Qanitin wal-Qanitat wal-Sadiqin wal-Sadiqat wal-Sabirin wal-Sabirat wal-Khashi'in wal-Khashi'at," and it keeps going, and it ends off with like, so basically how the ayah flows, it's like Inna al-Muslimin wal-Muslimat, right? All you men believer, all you men like Muslims, and all you women Muslims. And then it goes on to list like 10 different types of acts that both men and women do. Like sabirin or sabirat, the men who are patient and the women who are patient, the men who give and the women who give. And he talks about that. And at the end, I pulled up the translation because I don't know exactly, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for them forgiveness and great reward. And it just goes to show that in the eyesight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter what actions we do, men or women, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees that as equal. So the forgiveness that we get, the reward that we get, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is acknowledging both of it equally. So
something that I just
Hibbo, you're on mute.
Just muted yourself.
You're muted.
No, all right, that was awkward. Anyway, something that I just want to quickly add to what Taha was saying is the fact that I think it's honestly unfortunate that if somebody like nowadays were to ask like that same exact question, you know, like why is it in the Quran that it's always like ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, like just in different scenarios, like it's always that, you know, exactly what you said, like the grammatical sense just always kind of seems like it applies to the guys, and like it doesn't necessarily always address like the women. And just if somebody like, you know, nowadays was to ask like that same question, I feel like they would kind of get some backlash and like, you know, why are you saying this? And just like the fact that like women shouldn't be speaking up in that way, it just kind of like put us in our place, so for lack of a better words. I just wanted to kind of comment on that because I thought that was kind of interesting. But just the fact that I don't know if you mentioned who it was who asked the question, but wasn't it the Prophet's his wife, Sallallahu
Yeah.
Sorry.
who asked the question? Yeah. So the fact that like she can ask that, and there was like literally revelation sent down, and the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu like didn't, you know, just like lash out at like what she said, like, you know, how can you say this? Like, you know, you're my wife, like you should know, you know, I'm losing my words, but you should know, like you're
the women of like Medina actually came to her, like Salama, like they knew that she was a woman to go to if they wanted to ask the Prophet a question. So they all come to her, it's like, can you please go ask him? And she's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. I'll go ask.
Yeah, there you go. I just kind of thought that was interesting, just comparing to like nowadays. If somebody were to ask that, like we would just get so like reprimanded and just get some big backlash, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something about this, but I just want to address Marwa's comment really quick. Man, Marwa's just on fire today, bro. She just said literally the fact that the U.S. is seen as a country that gives freedom for women, while we have never had a female president, and in some Muslim countries there are and were female leaders. Like that's some fire facts right there, you know, like Western feminism preaching equality, but only for white women. Okay, anyway. But no, like I think that's true, you know, like I don't know. Like it's the U.S. is kind of has like that liberal sense, but in as seen and perceived in our government system, that is not the case. Even if you look at, unfortunately, some of the cases that our president and our other leaders, Supreme Court justice people are in right now, but that's a different topic. But I agree with what Marwa said. So obviously, as we see, there's unfortunately plenty of hurdles Muslims already have to jump. So imagine being a Muslim woman. And the hurdles are even higher. And the worst part is that it's not just the Western culture that promotes this behavior, it's our own countries back home that implement it like it's the alphabet. So, what are some ways that you have seen or experienced or heard the backwards treatment of women, and how would you define it to be un Islamic?
All right, so I'm about to go off. So Pakistan, that's where I'm from. All right, and the way women treated there, it's a little scary because, I mean, Pakistan was found on trying to be an Islamic country. Okay, just roughly. I'm not going to go into the politics of it. But the thing that makes me so disappointed is that it's not implemented that way at all. Women are oppressed over there. And the scary thing is that, sorry, someone just called me. This very scary thing is that people think what they're following is Islamic. I mean, husbands are allowed to say whatever they want to their wives or whatever it is. And it's so disheartening to see that. And I'm sure that people who are from Pakistan or maybe India, they or any one, they've heard of the Women's March movement that happened in Pakistan, where people were holding signs saying "Meri Jism Marzi," my body, my choice. Which is also, when you think about it, Pakistan, what they're trying to do is they're trying to take Western ideology and they're trying to apply it to their own country when they already have Islam. That's what makes me really worried about the women over there, because I don't think Islam is unfortunately being taught or being implemented in any country the way it's supposed to. And it's very scary to see that. I mean, I can't stress that enough. I mean, if someone else wants to go, because I get very heated talking about this, but yeah.
Go off, sis.
I went off, bro.
Okay, so the question was, how have women been mistreated or something along those lines?
Yeah. And how is it un-Islamic? What do you think?
So for me personally, I wanted to kind of talk about my own experience. I don't have any sisters. I have two brothers and my dad and my mom. So it's a very testosterone laced house. You know what I'm saying? There's not a lot of, I don't have a lot of experience. Okay, I'm gonna move on from that point that I was trying to make. What I'm trying to say is, I don't know I don't know the struggle that women go through. I have a lot of friends who are females, and they tell me all the time about the struggles that
You have girlfriends?
Astaghfirullah.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. He said it live. I have many girlfriends. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. The month of Ramadan. لا إله إلا الله. Where's your mom? Where's mommy?
watching. She's watching. So
She's watching?
His whole
Astaghfirullah.
Ramadan is on.
Waiting for her to come in and give you a little smack on
Or like the shib shib.
the shib
You
shib.
just see applying in the podcast and hit him on the
Come beat you, man. You-
Hey,
Sorry,
Ty.
go ahead. Sorry, I had to interrupt you there.
Oh, you're good. Okay.
Oh, everybody's lolling, bro. Caught you lacking, bro.
I've heard a lot of stories from females or from my Muslim friends who are females telling me about their own struggles. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of things that I hear is that Muslim men, and a lot of it happens in our own community, sometimes they act like they know, and sometimes they act like they can speak on the girl's behalf, right? Which to me boggles my mind, because one, you're not a girl. You don't have to go through the struggles that girls go through. And two, well, that's the main point, right? You're not a girl. So if you're gonna sit here and comment about how women are wearing their hijab, I think only two people can do that. If you're a scholar, you can sit and say the Quran says this, the Sunnah says this is why you shouldn't do it. Or if you're a girl. But if you're a guy, dude. You don't have to go through the struggle that hijabis go through on a daily basis. All right, so it looks like you have something to say.
That's your mom was commenting.
I'm looking at your mom commenting on the YouTube. I gotta respond to her now.
Oh man, no, but the point that I'm trying to make, I hear a lot of guys.
She said he's innocent.
Oh man,
Aw.
Problem.
that's very cute, but I don't know, man.
You know, man, props to his mom for defending
He's a
him
good kid.
on the spot. Man.
She got your back, man. She got your back. That's all I know. MashaAllah. Go give her a kiss after this, inshallah.
I will. But no, dude, if you're a guy and you can't sit here and claim and tell women what to do and how to wear their hijab, especially if you're not a learned, educated guy about Islam, who do you think you are to sit here and tell girls, hey, you're wearing the hijab improperly? dude, like they have to go out every single day wearing that hijab. If you're a guy, there's nothing about you that tells you you're a Muslim. Like when you're walking down the street, if you're not wearing a thobe and a kufi, there's nothing about you that tells other people around you that, hey, you're a Muslim. Whereas women who wear the hijab, especially, they're the front lines of our deen. You know what I'm saying? Like when you see a hijabi, automatically you know that's a Muslim. Whereas if you see a bearded guy like me or like Taha, you can assume like, oh, maybe he's like Mexican, or maybe, you know, he's like Sikh or like Hindu. I don't know. There's different ways. But if you're a girl, you know right away that, you know, you're Muslim. Wow, that was really that. I don't know if I got that point across good, but
No, you did. That was very well said. Also, who am I echoing from?
I think Nadia is echoing. I think
I'm echoing.
it might be you.
How do I fix that?
Allahu alam.
Ayatul Kursi.
All right, something that I wanted to kind of mention, I guess, from my own experiences. So I know some people personally. I'm from Palestine, who, like, people right now, like, who live back home. I know some people who literally, like, would drop out of high school because their parents tell them, you know what, you're not good enough. Why don't you just be, like, a stay-at-home mom? And, you know, we'll find you a husband, you'll get married, like, next month, and you know what, that'll be like the rest of your life, basically. Like I literally know some people like right now, like 2020, who this is like essentially, that's just, you know, the culture and like the way that it is, which is really unfortunate. And I think that the advancement of women through higher education is such a really important, I guess you could say, pillar. I don't know. It's just something that, for instance, like I guess going off of the person that I kind of chose that kind of inspired me, Maryam radiallahu anha, just the fact that she was able to essentially dedicate, you know, her entire life like as a scholar, regardless of her gender. And then, you know, you see people like nowadays, like, yeah, like alhamdulillah, I feel like we're fortunate that there are many women, obviously, like who go to college, like we're all college students, we're fortunate enough to have that education. But I just think like from my personal experiences, not everybody is able to obtain that just because of their gender. I think that a lot of women are seen as they're seen as objects. I don't remember who mentioned that kind of earlier. And even like in the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, like before Islam, he there was essentially this kind of idea that women are seen as objects in a way where they're like inherited, so to say, like as part of the family. Correct me, Gordon Arman, if that's like I'm saying it wrong, but I just think the aspect of education is really important. I feel like that could be taken away just because you're a woman, and you're seen as not good enough to obtain knowledge and to continue your education to obtain a career, and become like a working member of society. So.
Just to add on that, I mean, I myself also am from Palestine, and Allahumma fiqh asad al-Muslimin kulli makan, you know, like I hope everybody in Palestine, you know, like is free of you know, all the mistreatment that's going on, and also the mistreatment in anywhere, you know, in Syria, Allahumma fiqh asad, like Allahumma like sa'ad everybody, like people in Syria, Burma, everybody's like being oppressed as far as Muslims go. And I feel like this backwards mentality, although we try to stress Islam in many of countries that are majorly Muslim, there's always this sense of culture that comes in, and this is where I feel like backwards mentality comes to play, and how women are not allowed to continue their studies. Not to like reiterate what you're saying here, but I'm just trying to stress the fact that women don't get that chance to really, you know, gain knowledge, although like they are very talented, and I feel like they could really you know, benefit from women in their knowledge, especially in a scholarly sense. I mean, like I mentioned before at the beginning about Fatima bint Hassan, and how she was known as the writer. I remember reading about her. She was known as the writer in a way because anytime anybody needed any like some hadith, they would usually go to her for these hadiths, especially the women at that time. And to know that this women back in the days were known as like such high figures is amazing. And I think it should also be played into like in our society today. Hopefully, inshallah, like it does make a turnaround where we do have more Islamic point of views on many of these subjects, or like women womanly aspects.
So I just want to address something. I just saw some comments in the chat. I don't know why I do this when I say in the chat. I don't know what's wrong with me. But it's kind of also addressing the question that I asked about how the backwards treatment of women and how it's un-Islamic. So I know that there is, I don't know, in an attempt to kind of empower women, people have almost neglected the women who have like chose to stay in the stereotypical position, as weird as it sounds. So for example, if a person chooses to be, or if a woman chooses to be a stay-at-home mom, she's almost looked down upon just because for doing that, which I don't agree with at all, to be honest. And I know that it was mentioned in the chat with comments and things like that. Like someone had said there's negative connotations surrounding a stay-at-home mom. And I agree. That's very, very, I think those negative connotations are not fair at all. Like I have seen so many times where girls are like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna work, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna have a maid, I'm gonna have a chef, I'm gonna have all this stuff. I would never belittle myself to that position. Like I've heard those words before. And I think that's very insulting, not only to the mothers who have raised us, for some who are stay-at-home moms, but also to women in general. Like if a girl chooses, same way as choosing to wear like the hijab kind of, where if a girl chooses to be a stay-at-home mom to raise her kids, that is her choice. That is up to her. That is not, that should not be looked on upon, and that should not be considered an inferior position, because that is a great choice and a great role to have, to be a mother, to raise your kids the way that they should be raised, whether that be Islamically, academically, culturally, however you want to raise them. Like that is, I think, a great role. Now, personally for me, I actually like, yeah, sure, I'm going to school to be a physical therapist, inshallah, and everything. But when I do, inshallah, have kids, I want to be there their first few years of their life, you know. And then when they go to school, I want to go back to work, inshallah. But for someone who had a mom who had to work for her whole entire childhood, it sucks. It sucks a lot to have that. So because I had that experience of not having a stay-at-home mom, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. That doesn't mean that I am any less of a woman. That just means I chose to be a stay-at-home mom for a bit. That just means I want to be a mom. That's all it really means. And I hate the fact that there is this negative connotation that comes up, because it should not be inferior. It should not be belittled. It should not be a degraded position. It should just be a woman who has a choice, and she chose to be that. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, on the other hand, if a woman does choose to work instead, there's also nothing wrong with that either. You know, ultimately, whether you want to work, whether you want to be at home, that's up to you. As long as it's your choice and as long as it's something you genuinely want to do and it's the best that you can do, have a blast, bro. As long as it's halal, do it. Like that's my only thing.
God blessed.
I just wanted to add something quickly to what I was kind of talking about before, and Mehdi kind of discussed this as well. I think that for women who are able to obtain like a higher education, and I guess like in an Islamic sense in general, and become like a scholar, are like just in general, for instance, like Yasser Qadi as a doctor, he essentially I remember he mentioned in one of his lectures, like he literally would learn from female scholars, and like he'd call them on the phone, and you know, to test his like qira'ah, because like they would learn the different ways of like qira'at, and so he'd essentially be tested by them. So it's important to just kind of remember that, like, of course, like since Islam has given women all their rights, like of course they have advanced and gotten all this education, and they're teaching each other, and I think that's something that should be kind of mentioned as something very important.
Okay, so
Just a quick plug here. Oh, my bad.
no. Go ahead, please, Clarissa.
You know, shout out to all the mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. All the grandmothers, all of those who will be mothers, and those who may not be blessed with children and are still hoping to be mothers or not. May Allah bless you all. I, you know, my wife is really, really talented, bright individual. I don't know if many of you met her. And you may have not met her because of the fact that I have five kids. And I can't say, and my five kids are sorry, 7, 6, 5, 3, and one of them will be turning 2 this month, inshallah. So when I think about, you know, my wife is one of the most talented, bright women that I know, who actually helps me in a lot of my work. And you know, honestly, I couldn't be in her position for even a day. Like I couldn't do it. I can't. And I will agree, and I will confess to this, that the sacrifice that she makes, the sacrifice that she makes um, for the family, for the kids, for me. You know, I always say as an imam, a lot of people will praise the imam and praise the scholars. Man, I can't say how important it is to actually praise the families behind those imams and scholars who are supporting them in their work. Because if it wasn't for my wife, I could not do what I'm doing. If it wasn't for my wife, and you know, obviously my parents and my mother and my sisters, I'm the only son, by the way. So I have three sisters. I grew up in a household of women. I grew up in a household of women who cared, who took care of me, who molded me, who I had the best relationships with. And so when I look at these women in my life, I know that I am who I am today as a man because of those women. I'm able to do my job as a man today because of the women in my life today. And yes, our mothers sacrifice at times, and it's a noble sacrifice. It's a noble position to be in. Someone mentioned something about having options. There are many options for women, but this is a very noble option. Do not consider it anything less than a noble option and a noble, position to be in. How would it be possible for me with five young kids to function if it wasn't for the strong, supporting wife that I have? So it's so important to understand this point. I mean, again, I always tell her, you can go do what you want to do, right? My wife, was someone who started hijab very late in high school. She started her niqab. She started covering her face in college. So she made a decision in college. She doesn't come from a religious background. She made a decision in college to cover her face. Now, a lot of people think that's extreme and whatever else. Go ahead, think what you want and judge what you want, and stereotype her however you want to. That's cool. But she was an American. She's a girl who was born and raised in the city of Chicago. She actually says to me when I say I'm from Chicago, she laughs at me. She's like, "You ain't from Chicago. You from the suburbs of Chicago. You're from Schaumburg, man. Stop saying you're from Chicago, right? I'm from Chicago. I know what it means to ride the train. I know what it means to take the bus. I know what it means to do all of the things that we have to do in the city that you have no idea of, right? And so she's in college and she was doing, she was in an accelerated program for a bachelor's and master's in psychology. And then she ended up getting married to me, and I ruined everything. We got married, and then we moved to Milwaukee. And then obviously after that, she was IIT. I think she was an IIT. She moved to Milwaukee. The whole dream of her finishing off school sort of ended there a few years ago. While we have kids, she tried to do online schooling. Really unfortunate story about that. The college that she started doing with, she had a few credit hours left to complete her bachelor's, and then a month before she completed, they basically went out of business, and so she couldn't finish her bachelor's, unfortunately. But the idea is, look, guys, sacrificing sometimes comes in these different forms, and so it's important to understand that.
So I wanted to actually, there's a couple comments that really caught my eye. The first thing, actually, Faisal, this is directed to you. Sadia said, Appa is the GOAT, no cap. Appa's always the GOAT.
Yeah. She used to feed you guys a lot back in the day.
Man, her food was amazing.
I used to invite all these little kids. This guy with Nadia would have no facial hair, and when he used to wear his leather jacket. You guys ever see that leather jacket photo of his?
No.
So when Nadia was a little kid and used to wear his leather jacket,
No.
I used to invite them over a lot. As students, like I always tell my students, like, wallahi, this is how I've always treated them, and I always thought of them like my own kids. So I used to have them over at the house a lot, and they used to eat a lot, and my wife used to cook for them a lot. After the five kids, it became a little bit more tough to do that. But I remember, man, they were like our kids. They were like, we used to take care of them and help them in whatever way that we could.
It was lit, man.
Did you also invite his leather jacket to the? I'm curious. Sorry.
That leather jacket never left him, man. It was like a little teddy bear. He always had it with him.
You gotta wear that leather jacket one time in these podcasts just for these constant references.
No, bro, what the heck? Y'all tripping. Okay, so there's actually like a comment that I saw in here, and it really, really caught my eye. Someone said, I can't find it right now, but it was something along the lines of, like, my daughter has a very false image, or very bad negative image about Muslim men because of all the TV shows that she watches and stuff like that. Like, for example, if you watch like Bab al-Hara, or if you watch like any of these other TV shows, right, the woman is always in the kitchen, like serving the food and whatever the case may be. So she said, because of that, my daughter said she doesn't want to get involved with a Muslim man at all, because that's her image of what a Muslim man is. But man, like, the reality is that's not the case at all, dude. Like, we mentioned the names of so many different women scholars, women warriors, women of medicine, women of knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Like, women in Muslim times, they did everything, bro. Like Aisha radiallahu anha, like someone mentioned before, was one of the greatest muhaddiths, one of the greatest scholars of hadith. So the unfortunate reality is, dude, like, culture and religion, they are not the same. If you are a Muslim woman, you are not required. Of course, like, again, we talked about just how beneficial it can be to be a stay-at-home mom, but of course, that is not something that's subjugated upon you and something that you have to follow. If you have dreams, then by all means, go and follow those dreams. Nowhere in Islamic Quran and Sunnah does it say that a woman can't pursue her dreams. Like, I'm gonna bring the example of my mom. My mom, man, like, she works so hard to teach people Quran and to do all these things. Like, she works so hard. Like, subhanAllah, man. Like, she doesn't have any free time because she's always busy doing stuff. And the last thing I want to mention is, Yanni said in the chat, he said at one point in time, like, Arabs used to bury their girls in the sand. Like, bro, Islam abolished all of that. Like, that's such a powerful, powerful statement. Like, culture and Islam are two totally separate things. So yeah, okay, that's all I wanted to say. Apologize.
So okay, one more last bit for me about this before we transition to the final question, inshallah. Q, and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if this is an authentic, I don't even know if it's a hadith. I don't know if it's authentic or not, but it's something I was always told growing up, like I don't know if it's a hadith or not, but basically there was a man who came to visit Umar ibn al-Khattab, and he went to go knock on his door, and then he just hears the Umar being yelled up. Mind you, this is not word for word. He hears Umar being yelled up by his wife, and the man's like, "This is awkward. I came here to complain about my wife." So then he's like dipping, and then Umar steps out. He's like, "Wait, you over there? Why'd you come visit me? And like, why aren't you coming in?" And the man goes, Omar, I came to come talk to you about my wife because she keeps yelling at me. And then I come here and the same thing is happening to you. And he's like, how do you let her yell at you? Like, you're Umar ibn al-Khattab. And Umar's like, my wife cooks for me. She cleans for me. She takes care of the kids for me, takes care of the house, takes care of me. I can't sit there and let her yell at me for 10 minutes. He's like, come on, that's not fair. And then that Sahaba was like, this is awkward because I did not think of it like that. He dipped, right? So it's just something I heard growing up, and I think it's very interesting that, like, I don't know why I really, really enjoy that. Like I said, I'm not even 100% sure if it's completely authentic or not. I tried to do some research on it, and there's like variable sources that say it is. Some say they're not really sure, but no one says it's not authentic. Again.
Yeah, it's a known
Okay,
narration.
just making
Yeah,
sure. But yeah, it's a very like.
I mean, it's not a hadith necessarily. It's an incident that took place in the life of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu.
But it's just a very wholesome, like, I don't know, it's very wholesome how, like, it's Muhammad ibn al-Khattab. If you like have heard of him, he's like this strong, like super big dude, like no one touched him like ever, because if you did, man, ya Allah, you're gonna need a lot of protection after that, you know, like. So it's very interesting to see how he treated his wife. But yeah, so the last question of the night, ladies and gentle folks. So sometimes, to kind of full circle, sometimes it feels like this issue will forever remain an issue. Unfortunately, this whole, just in general, this whole like women are inferior stigma, or women are oppressed has been going on, it feels like, since the beginning of time. How can we as a society progress, and how can we as individuals play a helping hand?
Okay, so I kind of want to talk about this because I feel like we've been kind of putting men on the short end of the stick, saying that men are oppressing us and men are doing this. Listen, women oppress women too, straight up, okay? So one thing I'm going to say as an advice for myself first and for other people is that when you make friends with another Muslim, no matter where she is in her deen, stick with her. That's your Muslim sister, dude, and support her no matter what. If she's having a tough day at work, if she's having a tough day at school, if something in her marital life is going wrong, be there for her. Even if you can't physically do anything, just listen to her and just make dua for her. Honestly. And the other thing is, don't be jealous of your Muslim sisters either. When you see them succeeding, be proud of them, because you know what, that they're representing our deen and stuff. They're succeeding. You should be proud of them, and you should say, you know what, I want to be like that, so I'm going to work harder. I'm going to do whatever I can just so I can be like my sister in Islam. I mean, that's something that I really think that we need to do, because I feel like I have noticed this quite a bit because I have been on this other side where people will be jealous and they try to take you down. That is so wrong. That is un-Islamic. We should be supporting each other.
So this whole overall topic, I think a lot, like the guys overall were a little bit hesitant to kind of address this issue. And after thinking about it for a while, I realized that I think it's essential that guys are part of this conversation, because I think that like, okay, I know that I remember there was like some MSA event for women in Islam, like I think a couple of years ago, and I was talking to some guys that are like, yeah, I was like super hyped to go, but then I found out the topic was women in Islam, and I'm not trying to like go to that. And like, it's super like sad to see that like guys don't take this seriously, and until and unless that it's like an equal conversation, I don't think there's going to be any like significant progress. And another thing that I was thinking about before this thing was like the perfection of women's rights in Islam, what's taught to us by the greatest man to ever walk the earth, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if like there needs to be like, the conversation needs to be done by both parties, both sides. So I mean, I think what we're doing right now is a very, very good first step. And I think things like this, these types of discussions, these types of conversations need to continue happening, so that guys and, like Nadia said, girls need to realize that we need to work together to like make progress, to make things, like make good things happen.
So I definitely agree, and I also kind of want to just go off of what both Nadia and Taha said. Yeah, like, just I preface this too, so I just want to like, I don't know the opposite of preface, but like kind of end it, I guess. With the whole idea that this isn't just like, you can't always blame men for this either. You know, like it's very important. It's very important to have men and women both involved in this conversation. And what we're doing right now, I think, is a big step and a big solution. There was some hesitancy just because, you know, we obviously sometimes I'm not a guy, so maybe I can't fully say this, but sometimes as a guy you feel uncomfortable, or you feel like I can't really talk on women's issues because I'm not a woman, and I don't want to come off as mansplaining when that's not the case, you know, or even just like, just in general, people are just nervous to ask questions because they don't want it to come off as disrespectful, you know, but that's not the case. Like, if you don't know, like, ask. There's nothing wrong with that, whether that be just about women in general, or Muslim women, or about the struggle, or about the hijab, whatever it may be. Like, at least for me personally, I would rather you ask straight up if you're confused or if you have a question, than just have your own ignorance lingering. Like, that's something that definitely needs to be implemented more in our culture. And it kind of goes off into like this whole cancel culture. No, if you want to ask a question, bro, just ask it. Like, you're not canceled. There's no harm in asking, as long as you're not rude about it. And when I mean rude, as long as you don't say anything like offensive that is obviously offensive in the question, it'll be fine. And just, yeah, I think women basically bashing on other women is a huge unfortunate problem. You know, like I said before, this whole idea of Western feminism has kind of neglected all other forms of women that are not white. And it's really upsetting to see that too. But just Muslim women, you know, Muslim women need to support each other. I mean, we need to support each other in general. Muslims need to support each other in general. We're an ummah, but like, if you see a Muslim girl succeeding, bro, hype her up. Like, let's go off, sis. You know, like, let's do it. You know, let's go. Where are we going? Kind of thing. Or it's like, you know, even if a girl is struggling with her religion, or if a girl is struggling with whatever she's doing, or if you see her doing something that's not exactly appropriate, don't judge her, bro. Like, if you genuinely care about someone, and this goes for any form of advice, if someone is doing something that's not okay, that's not appropriate, don't ever approach them publicly. That is so disrespectful, and it's always going to be taken bad. If you see someone that is doing something that you care about, and you're just genuinely saying it for the sake of them, go to them privately and pull them aside and then talk to them there. Like, we need to really empower each other, as cliche as it sounds. And it's not just women empowering women, it's the whole ummah empowering each other. So, but yeah, Mahdi, I know you want to say something. So go off, sis.
I actually more so we should rename you Go Off Sis. Like, can
Nadia changed the name to Leather Jacket. I'll change my name to Go Off Sis. I got you.
I mean, yeah, we can change Nadia's to Leather Jacket if only if you're Go Off Sis. Okay, is that
I'm
okay?
Go Off Sis. We're good.
Yeah. Equity, right?
Equity, of course.
Anyways, I was just gonna ask. I think this question is more of a Q&A question. Um, I always get asked sometimes by my younger sisters. I actually got asked today one of these questions, but my sister asked me like, why can't I lead prayer?
Mm.
I know it's like a touchy subject because there's like different beliefs on what the answer is, but
Yeah,
she asked me why can't I
man.
can I why
Subhanallah.
can't I lead?
We're like at 12:30 now, and this is when we're supposed to end our discussion. But like we haven't really got into the controversial stuff. Really, we haven't. Like we haven't. Like if I ask you the question about the inheritance laws in Islam, or the divorce rulings in Islam, or about women having half a testimony of a man, or about women not being able to lead the prayers, or can't be a khatibs, or can't do things, certain things that men do in Islam. When I have the question about all of these different really controversial but such important discussions, like women and their role in the masjid, right? uh, and the idea of a man being able to marry multiple women, but a woman not being able to marry multiple men, right? There's all of these different topics that come up that women all the time that I'm always asked. You have the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ that always talk about, there's certain ahadith that people will take and use as, a way of degrading women. Like, oh, did you know all the majority of the people, dwellers of hell, are going to be women? Right? They use these ahadith to sort of degrade women. And there are certain ahadith that like last session, or the podcast before that, we talked about a hadith where the Prophet says that if you have to if making sajda to anybody would be permissible, it would be to your husband, right? So what about all those issues? Like, don't you guys have questions about that, or are we all content? We all understand that why Islam says these things, because we are constantly attacked about the position of women in Islam. We are constantly attacked why Islam does not allow for women to be a full witness. Like, what is this idea of women are naqisatul aql? What does this mean that women are deficient in their intellect? What does that mean? Are women truly deficient in their intellects? And if that's what the Prophet is saying, that may seem very offensive to some people. But what does that mean? Why is it that the Prophet said that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala allows for men to be given more in inheritance than the women? Why does Allah Subhanahu wa Taala say وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ, that men have a status above women? Allah says that in the Quran. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. It's a statement. I'm not making this up. So how do we address that? What are the answers to that? Now, I know that some of you may have the answers, but these are real questions, and they require real answers. They require us to actually go back to the seerah, um, and bring them up. I mean, I don't know if we do it today, if that's like what we want to do now, because that's a conversation that will go on for a very, very long time. Maybe we can have a follow up IG, or maybe IG live, or maybe we could have a follow up podcast session to this, like taking all the controversial hadith, and maybe we could do that. Maybe bring out all the controversial hadith, all the controversial verses. Why does Allah allow for a man to beat his wife? Right? Allah gives permission for men to beat women. That's a question that we're asked all the time. Shows that women are inferior to men. I mean, there's so much that this topic requires. Um, and I just don't know if we have the ability to go into all of it now. But understand one thing, that I said this in the last podcast that I was on as well, is that a lot of these ahadith, unfortunately, are not understood in the light of Sunnah, in the light of the Quran and Sunnah. Rather, we understand these ahadith and these rulings and the statements of the Prophet from actually our cultural understanding of things. And so that's where we there's a sense of a problem that gets created. A lot of women will also have an issue with why we are being told to dress a certain way. There was a question that came up by Sadia, I think, multiple times, that the aura of a man and women are different. Why do men have to cover less than women have to cover, right? Well, that's just the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the anatomy of the human being, and that is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet has taught us to cover ourselves, right? The anatomy of the human being, there's a physical nature of men and women are different. And so the aura is going to be different because of that perspective as well. Now, does that mean that covering is only necessary for women and not for men? Absolutely not. Does that mean I can walk around with my shorts as long as my navel and until my knees is covered and nothing wrong with that? No, absolutely not. Um, and so these, sorry, I see a bunch of comments and I see a bunch of comments now about um,
We definitely need a part two, man. Or like,
Or like an IG live or something for these.
yeah, these are really really important topics, and we need to address them. And right now, I'll be, you know, alhamdulillah, we had a great discussion conversation. However, this conversation was more like, you know, hey, we're all, you know, yes, we support women, yay, mashallah, great, alhamdulillah, all for empowering women. And I think that we all understand that. I think that we all get that. I think we all are on the same page. I think that we all understand that women are um, honored in Islam, and the Prophet came and granted them that honor when that honor did not exist. They were treated as property. They were treated as, as second class citizens. They were treated like animals, and the Prophet came and give them the right to inherit, give them the right to do business, give them the right to do this and do that and everything, mashallah. But again, in our day and age, we are being attacked for this very reason. We are being attacked for this very reason by Muslims, by non-Muslims, by Orientalists. Everyone is attacking Muslims and Islam about, hey, why does Islam allow for these things? Why does the Quran say this? And why does Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam say these things then? If your Islam and your religion is true, then why? And let me, unfortunately, because of not finding real answers to these questions, it leads a lot of young people away from Islam, or it makes a lot of women and some men disheartened from the religion. It does. I have seen it so many times, so many times, how women and girls and young brothers and sisters are so discouraged by the deen and by the religion because they could not find a sufficient answer to the questions about all of these controversial issues that come up. And again, now I might say, I may add this as well, that um, I'm not going to necessarily blame them, but I'm also going to say blame all of us. Sometimes we don't actually look for those answers. True, to be honest with ourselves, a lot of times we're confused about issues, but we're not willing to go the extra mile to actually look for the answers or find the right person to give you the answer. Okay, and so that's why we are a lot of times we're confused and we are not happy and we're, you know, disheartened. But that doesn't mean that the answers are not out there. The answers are out there. The answers should be sought, and inshallah, we can probably do a session on this, inshallah.
I just wanted to add like that. I love that the kind of format we've been having. That at the beginning we had like Iman slumps and talking about the Prophet ﷺ, and we had this like kind of boost in Iman for the beginning of Ramadan. I feel like the second part really stresses stuff that we really get asked on the normal. Like there's like controversial things in our society, or even stuff that we don't know how to answer. I know Yanni said something which is everything you said, Karin Aman, is are questions I get from so many young Muslims and non-Muslims at my school. And I think it's really important that I feel like this podcast really covers a lot of like all, as far as I for me, actually answers so many questions I have, or you do answer a lot of questions I have about questions that I get from non-Muslims and Muslims as well. And they're hard to answer questions, and I really love that we're taking this turn to controversial and like statements or like stuff that we can address.
I just want to add one more like quick little thing, dude. Like these questions that come about are totally normal. We as human beings, we have a tendency to we hear something that we dislike, or that superficially we feel some sort of way about it, and we just push it to the side, or we push it to a deep dark part of our brain. When the reality is, if you do your due diligence and you search for the answer, you will find an answer that will not only satisfy you, but you will find an answer that makes total logical sense. You know what I'm saying? So as Muslims, unfortunately, we have a tendency to just run away from these questions rather than, like Qari Sub said, look for someone knowledgeable enough to give us the answer. The reality is, like, yes, when you hear these stuff, like when you hear this stuff superficially, you're like, whoa, this sounds bad, right? But dude, you do the digging, you do your due diligence. I love that word. You do your due diligence. Sure enough, you'll find that there's a logical, rational answer that makes sense, and inshallah, your iman will increase rather than decrease. So yeah, we need to encourage people to ask questions and to ask these uncomfortable questions, because we have people like Qarisa, mashallah, who's amazing at addressing these types of issues. So that's all I want to talk about.
I wanted to kind of quickly address something that Claudia and Arman kind of delved into. So obviously, like, men and women are different. You know, like, there's that verse in the Quran, like, "Laysa dhakaru kal untha," and like, this honestly applies to like biological, like psychological, physical, like emotional differences. Like, we are completely different. And I think that, like, of course, there are some gender roles that are differentiated because of that. And some women might, like, I know we kind of mentioned this, like, some women might feel a certain way, or that they're oppressed because they don't have a societal position, or they're not given the recognition that they need because of gender exploitation. But regardless of, like, all of that and all those controversial gender disparities, I think it's really important to just kind of, at the end of the day, like, realize that gender, like, means nothing when it comes to like, your path to Jannah, and just, like, the doors of Jannah in general, and being, like, a pious Muslim. So that's, like, honestly, in Islam, like, the ultimate gender equality, I think. And the fact that you can have, like, it all just stems down to iman and your piety, and your being, like, a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that at the end of the day, that we're all, there is, like, a gender equality, and that Islam has that in place for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Just one small thing I want to add is that I love what everyone's saying here, is that, and I think someone mentioned the comments here and I can't find it right now, but was saying that Islam is a religion of logic, which is so true, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to command us to do something or implement something that doesn't make sense to us. Fine, there might be some things that we don't have the answers to, but we as believers, that's just something that we accept because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to do it for the best of us. The one thing that I was thinking of is that recently I just ended my embryology class, and I learned from the beginning of how a baby is developing, and, like, the small steps that they have to do to develop, and also what the mother has to go through. And I just think about that. And honestly, when I finished that course, I just sat there and I'm like, my mother did this 3 times and she was perfectly fine with it. She raised her children with all the love and respect that she can. And there's a reason that Jannat is at her feet. It makes sense because of all the stuff that she had to go through her pregnancy, to carry, all of our mothers had to go through just to carry us and to bring us in this world. They are a huge blessing. And that's just something I really wanted to add, because honestly, I have a much deeper appreciation for mothers after taking that class. It's amazing what they have to go through and what they don't say, honestly, subhanallah.
Yeah. You know, sorry, something that you mentioned, that's why I want to just piggyback off of that. The idea of that we'll understand everything is logic, everything is logical. Is that a true statement? Like, in the sense that we will understand everything. Like, everything is so logical enough that we will understand that God has told us a reason for everything. That is actually not true. We don't know the logic and the reasoning behind everything. We assume that the reason and logic behind certain things are this or that. But the reality is that we don't know. Allah does not need to tell us the logic behind things. Allah is not in a position where we have to tell Allah, only if you tell me why I'll do it. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. Only if you tell, when you're a kid, my kids do this sometimes. Like, my wife's like, okay, hey, stop playing with the ball in the house. And so this was the other day, my son said, why? He asked for an explanation. And I stopped him right there. I said, wait, listen, buddy, you're 5. You don't get to ask why. Like, hold up there. Like, your mother is telling you not to bounce a basketball on the wood floors in the house because that's not where a ball is supposed to bounce. Like, sometimes you don't ask, and sometimes Allah doesn't tell us. And sometimes just because Allah doesn't tell us doesn't mean that it lacks wisdom, because Allah is Al-Hakim. Allah is all-wise, and every action of His, whether we see wisdom in it or not, has wisdom. Whether we understand the wisdom or not, has wisdom, because you and I are short sighted, that we only see what is in front of us. We don't see the bigger picture, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's good for us, and Allah knows what's best for us. And so, even though we don't understand something logically, and that's what one of the comments was, I think Abdullah mentioned this, that hey, listen, we try our best to understand, we try our best to find the depth of a situation in a concept in Islam. But hey, listen, the reality is, Allah does not tell us, nor is Allah um in a position that we can't make Allah tell us why something needs to be done for us to then say, okay, fine, we're going to do it now, right? I hope that makes sense. Like, it's not something that Allah is required to do for us.
I agree with you, Khalsa, but I also think that there are definitely some questions that have answers. You know what I'm saying?
There
Like
are answers, definitely there are answers, there's
even,
no doubt.
even logical, rational answers, like the story of Aisha radiallahu anha, something that a lot of people have concerns about. There's a logical, rational answer to that. Like I
Oh,
agree.
like, are you talking about the age of Aisha when she got married?
Yeah, like things like that.
That's, by the way, that's another huge topic, the age of Aisha when she got married. I forgot to include that in the points that I was mentioning, but yeah, there is a huge conversation. But I'm talking about again, that's not even Quran, right? That's basically an incident that took place, and we understand what happened and what the circumstances were. I'm talking about a particular law that Allah commands us to do in the Quran. Okay, tell me the wisdom behind why we make masah of the top of the foot and not the bottom of the foot. What's the wisdom behind that? Because logic would have told you that if you're going to make masah over your socks, you should have made masah over the bottom rather than the top. But the bottom of your feet is usually dirtier. You wipe the leather sock. If you're wearing a leather sock, you wipe the bottom of it to clean off the dirt that's on the bottom of your sock. There are certain things that you don't find a logical answer to. You do it because the Prophet told you to do it. You do it because Allah told you to do it. Yes, in places that we can find those answers, we find those answers. And Allah has kept enough for us. It's not that Allah has said, hey, listen, blindly follow anything. No, Allah does not say that. Allah does not say blindly follow. We're not blind followers. We follow because Allah teaches us something very beautiful. And therefore, most of the things that we find, Allah teaches us the understanding behind it. The Prophet teaches us the reasoning behind it. But there are certain things that we may not understand. And it's okay if you don't understand it. It's okay if you don't understand something. Remember that. As a kid, I didn't understand a lot of things my parents told me to do and not to do. I didn't understand. As a kid, I didn't understand it. Now, as a parent, I understand, wow, okay, now I know why my parents told me to do this or why they told me not to do something. You may not understand it now, but you may come to a realization later of why something happens and why something didn't happen. And what the reasoning behind that was. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in. Apologize for. By the way, can I say something? Today I held myself. I held myself back because this is a topic that I'm very passionate about. The different, the whole idea of feminism, the whole idea of equality, the whole idea of equity, all of these topics. There's so much, so much, so much that I wanted to share, but I held back for my man Leather Jacket there because he needed some time to share his beautiful thoughts with all of us. I wanted to give everybody some time today to speak, and so inshallah, we'll go from there, inshallah.
So yes, inshallah, it's been a very long session, folks. But I just kind of want to like roughly touch on everything and then end it, inshallah. Just want to remind everyone that in Islam it is encouraged to ask questions too. Humans tend to have this prideful entitlement almost that we kind of have to know the answers to every question, which I think is what Kyon was trying to like basically say is that we aren't entitled to all the answers, but there is almost an answer for everything in Islam, which is nice. I know in some other religions, if you even try to, I've had non-Muslim friends ask me like, hey, so you actually pray 5 times a day and wear the scarf. Like, what is it about your religion that makes you so loyal to it? And I think a big thing is that I've always been encouraged to ask questions. Not everyone gets that blessing in other, religions, not to bash on anyone, of course, but that is something that Islam has encouraged, alhamdulillah, and I think we should all be very grateful for it. um and then just to kind of like fully wrap up, so like, man, women just concise manner, bro. Women are great. Like, alhamdulillah for like all the women in our life, not just our mothers, because unfortunately, I wish, like, not I wish, but unfortunately, not everyone is capable of that. So if you're not, please don't forget that doesn't make you any less of a woman either. To all of our sisters, our mothers, the women in our lives, whether we're related by blood or not, like, may Allah bless us all endlessly. May Allah grant all of the incredible women in our lives Jannatul Firdaus, especially the ones who have struggled so much for us and who we can easily sit down, make dua for, and be like, yeah, Allah, like my mom deserves everything. Please give it to her. You know, my sister deserves. If my sister sees it, she's gonna be so happy. My sister deserves everything. Please give it to her. You know, my niece, my beautiful, mashallah, adorable niece deserves everything, bro. She's the light of my life. You know, like may Allah bless all of the women in our lives and make it so much easier for us to live in this life. This dunya is not meant for us. I think we need to remember that. Jannah is always a goal, inshallah. Ya Allah, please give us all the chance, actually, men or women, it doesn't matter, to just be close to you. And inshallah, reunite all of us in Jannah. But yeah, that's it for the night, guys. We will keep you updated on the potential part 2. My title is something else, but we'll let you guys know. The next podcast is Monday. There is a book to recommend. It's called Great Women in Islam by, yes, right there, Nadia pulled it out. We will post a picture on our story and put it on our highlights. We also have on our link, when you click on our Instagram live, or not on our Instagram live, in our Instagram bio, it has resources to things about the Prophet Muhammad SAW as well, if you want to read more on that. And we'll include this book into the resources as well. So that's just basically about the incredible woman in Islam. I definitely recommend it. It's been recommended by a lot of people. But yeah, so don't forget Monday podcast, inshallah. We'll keep you guys updated.
I add something really quickly. I'm so sorry. Okay, so there's actually a book. I talked to brother Amir, and he told me that there is a sheikh, his name's Akram Nadwi, and he is compiling a book where it's about female scholarships, and they said that it's gonna be a 40-volume series, and they got about 10,000 women on there, subhanAllah. But on Amazon, I looked it up, it's called the Muhaddithat, and there's a pre-volume on there that's available right now. So if you guys want to look into that, because I'm definitely going to buy a copy and look into this too. So
Yeah,
I want to add that on there.
Sheikh Akram Nadwi is a scholar in the UK, who has actually done a different series. If you, I mean, you can go try to listen to him. If you're someone that isn't like someone who's monotone, you're not going to enjoy it. Maybe you enjoy the writing more. Just to be frank, I mean, he's a great scholar, mashallah, but you may not have too much fun, enjoy listening to him. And that's another thing about like Islamic knowledge. Sometimes you only like to take Islamic knowledge from people who are, entertaining. He's not very entertaining in his speech, but he's very knowledgeable in his speech. And so sometimes you got to get used to listening to people who are knowledgeable and not necessarily only entertaining. And he's a very knowledgeable scholar. He's actually done a whole series on sahabiyat, or female scholars, female muhaddithat, right? The female muhaddithun of our muhaddithat of our basically ummah, and he compiles that, and he talks about that. So that's that's one of the recent works that is done. But however, there's a lot of other works in our history about the female companions, about females in our history in general, and all of that kind of stuff. Mashallah.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining, inshallah. It's been lit. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on notification, follow us on Instagram, make dua for us, please. Just tossing that in there.
So if you're sharing this video, please make sure you share it to like Muslim people or people that you think will benefit, because I'm sure some of you saw in the comments someone said something. I'm not sure if this person discovered it on their explore page or whatever, but it may be due to someone sharing with someone who's not, Allahu alam. So please just make sure who you share this video with, and let's try to avoid something like that happening in the future, inshallah.
But yeah, thank you all. We will see. Oh, look, my name go off just popped up. But yeah, inshallah, Monday we will stay tuned. See you soon, guys. It's really
All right.
late.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.
Peace out.
All right. Salam.